Listen up. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast belong solely to the podcast participants, and not to any participant's employer, organization, committee, or other group or individual. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. You know, for fun. So lighten up and enjoy. Stomping Jen, who will heretofore be known as Gen 2. Do you know why?
Why?
Because we will be talking about Star Wars. And I, from heretofore, will be known as Sawtooth Wren.
All right.
After my favorite new Star Wars character. Are you ready? And we have a crack panel of Star Wars fans.
I'm ready.
We're going to be talking to Grand Moff Montgomery. We will be talking to TK413, an android of some kind. Mm-hmm. And we will be talking to Kay Tano. Are you ready?
I am.
All right, let's go.
The Soft Serve Podcast.
Creamy, delicious ideas without the creepy truck. Gen 2. Is the Force with you?
I hope so. Oh my god.
I hope so too. Well, everybody, welcome to the Star Wars Spectacular episode.
Spectacular.
Of the Soft Serve Podcast. I'm excited. We have, like I said before, a panel of Star Wars fans and experts here with us.
Yes, because we certainly are not.
To talk about a wide range of Star Wars topics, but I think we're going to primarily focus on The Mandalorian Season 2.
Yes.
Right? And this podcast came about because a lot of people are posting online about The Mandalorian Season 2, and some folks said we should talk about this. Mm-hmm. And so here we are, we're talking about it. Now, I must warn people, this podcast will be full of spoilers.
Yes.
So if you haven't seen The Mandalorian Season 2, if you haven't seen Star Wars episodes 7 through 9.
If you've been living under a rock.
If you haven't seen episodes 1 through 6 even, this isn't the podcast for you. Get lost, right?
That's right.
And if you haven't seen any of those things yet, I want to say one thing to you.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Shame on you all. All right. So, without further ado, let us start in reverse order and introduce Kay Tano. Hello, Kay Tano.
Hello.
Ah, there she goes.
Yes. Thank you for joining us. I see sitting on your lap is a Grogu, also known as Baby Yoda. So we'll say hello to this cute little character. Grogu is he's wearing something. What is he wearing there?
He's got his Christmas sweater on, and he's carrying his pet frog.
Aww.
Grogu gets the celebratory lightsabers. Okay, now we're going to go to TK413. Hello, TK.
Hello, Sawtooth Wren. Nice to join you guys.
Thank you for joining us. And I see on your lap is some kind of infant creature as well.
I've got my own, the child joining us as well.
Well, that child gets a celebratory lightsaber as well. Okay, and last but certainly not least, and I'm most scared. This is Grand Moff Montgomery.
Do you have like sinister?
Hello, Grand Moff Montgomery.
I'll have to say, we prefer the Imperial March.
I know,
theme.
right?
The Moths are definitely we stand in opposition to Vader and the Emperor. And by the way, nice attempt to infiltrate, but you called a TK stormtrooper a droid. You know, I'm questioning your allegiance at this point.
Well, as Sawtooth Ren, the dark side has clouded my mind. I clearly have gotten confused.
We clearly do not know as much about this as you.
And I'll confess, we were talking a little bit offline before this. I am not a Star Wars expert. So you all are, and we're going to dig into some cool Star Wars topics. But I think the reason we wanted to primarily get together and chat was about this Mandalorian Season 2. Am I right, Gen 2?
I believe so.
Yeah. So where do we want to start? I thought a good place to start was with the reveal of Baby Yoda's name, Grogu. What do we think of this?
General applause to putting a name to the face and giving him a real backstory. Added to the feeling that he's a child, but not. I mean, I think that added him to the storyline in a significant way. Yes.
TK413, that's a good observation. The reveal of his name came with a very detailed backstory given by, and help me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, Ahsoka Tano, right?
Perfect.
Who was a Jedi who escaped during the Order 66 given by Senator Palpatine at the time, right? Do I have this correct?
He was Chancellor Palpatine at the time and about to turn into the Emperor. He already had the power that he needed in order to make the Empire rise. Ahsoka had actually left the Jedi Council earlier on because she was set up for a murder. And the Jedi Council had her on trial even though she was innocent. She was very jaded by the situation. So she bounced and they tried to pull her back after they proved her innocent. But she said, too bad, so sad, and she left. So Ahsoka is actually pretty much the epitome of what we know as a Gray Jedi, which does not fall into the light or the dark side.
Ooh.
Now,
Kendra just made me as happy of a human as I can possibly be right now.
Now, Grand Moff Montgomery, where did we learn about these details around this character, Ahsoka Tano?
It was in the... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, please go.
No, the penultimate episode. No, there was one before that where we get Bill Barr. There was the episode before that where we have Ahsoka introduced, played by Rosario Dawson, and setting up, where she is. She meets up with Mando, and they have a conversation about the child's history, and they're she puts him on a secondary side quest to see if there's any Jedi out there, and he sends a Force-ogram later on.
I'd like to make sure we don't underestimate the Force-ogram.
Yeah.
That was the most epic meditation any Jedi has ever done in still image or moving screen.
Yeah,
Props to Grogu.
That was amazing, and we'll talk about that. I think what I wanted to know specifically about Ahsoka Tano, because she plays such a big role in revealing Grogu's name and his backstory. Where do we learn about her in the Star Wars canon? Because it doesn't happen in the Mandalorian show. It obviously happens somewhere else. Do you all? Can you shed some light on that for me?
Absolutely. Ahsoka comes initially from the Clone Wars.
Okay.
And she becomes the Padawan of one Anakin Skywalker. We know how that turns out. So Clone Wars bridges the gap between episodes 2 and 3, but actually now culminates with Order 66, and the final season of Clone Wars that just came out in February 2020 focuses on Ahsoka's perspective of that happening when she's already left the temple.
Huh.
Yeah. And we're first introduced to her in the Clone Wars movie, I believe. It was like that bridged the gap between the 2D animation that was being released by LucasArts, and then they transitioned to the 3D like Clone Wars-y thing. It was with baby Jabba the Hutt's kid, who was affectionately called Stinky.
What? This sounds like Scrappy Doo.
Well, but really, that little movie kind of sets the stage for the Clone Wars animated series, which has become known as like the Favreverse and the Philoverse. A series of 7 seasons animated that really delves and expands the Star Wars mythos, and in a beautiful, beautiful way. I said it when the prequels were being released. I'll say it again. We don't even need the prequels. We just need that show.
It's true.
It's amazing.
And all the credit for that goes to Dave Filoni, who is actually the one who's going to be writing and directing Ahsoka's show, even though he's got some cohort helping him out. When he put that together, not only did it redeem the prequels entirely, even Jar Jar. Yep. Even Jar Jar.
No,
agreed.
But it bridged the gap, and it also actually gave you a backstory and character development for all of the Jedi that eventually do get taken down in Order 66. So
I feel like
that you see all these characters you care about, and the clones too.
I feel like I'm going to have to watch this. I want to ask TK413. Do we know what? And I'm sorry if you said this, Kay Tano, and I just forgot. But maybe TK413 can shed some light on this. Why was Ahsoka Tano being tried by the Jedi? She was on trial, and
he was set up. And I'm going to need Kay Tano's backup on this one because I remember it, but it was a while ago and another child ago. She was set up for a murder by the Inquisitors? No, I'm getting a head shake. She was set up for a murder that she didn't commit, and the Jedi put her on trial, and that started her path to leaving the Jedi, which is something that hasn't quite been explained too much in the canon, which I think will be a lot of fun moving forward in explaining that there are Sith, there are Jedi, and there are Gray. They're really not even Jedi. They're all Force users, and getting into that side of the lore, which we saw a little bit in the new movies with Luke kind of walking away a bit. Again, it's not talked about. And that's what Clone Wars and Rebels and all these shows that were brought into the canon of Star Wars really were able to develop.
So they talk about this idea of a Gray Jedi. Who can tell me a little more about what that is, a Gray Jedi?
Well, I think a Gray Jedi is actually more in line with the actual like beginnings of the Jedi Order. Like it's Force users who stand in balance between the light and the dark side of the Force. We have like a rich history since like the 1970s of all the extended universe, which now Disney has decanonized and called like the Legends series, that really delves into like what the early Jedi Order was. And it was, groups of Force sensitive individuals who first took up residence on like the inner core world of Tython and developed this order that centered around utilization of all aspects of the Force and balance. And then they went through multiple great schisms as the order fractured and developed and really polarized. It's fascinating to me. Like you have this idea that was introduced in the original Lucas trilogy, the episodes like 4 through 6, where the idea was that there would be this person who comes and brings the Force back into balance. And so Ahsoka Tano as a Gray Jedi, I think she's a more pure version of what the Jedi Order began as. They don't stand in the light or in the dark, but they stand in the middle ground where most of us live our lives.
Kay Tano, you were pointing at
gesturing wildly
at baby Grogu on your lap. What say you about what Grand Moff Montgomery is telling us.
Well, I was getting very emphatic about the child because Grogu is the chosen one. There's no doubt about that. And Grogu and Anakin Skywalker, who was formerly believed to be the chosen one, were both born in the same year. Possible cross prophecies, possible dyad in the Force that has yet to be explored, and then was fractured by Anakin's death as Darth Vader.
Oh, that's really interesting.
The other piece
do we just become best friends?
Yes, absolutely.
So I want to actually seize on that. Like, one of the things we learned is that Grogu was in the Jedi Temple when Anakin made his final turn to the dark side, and he walked into the temple to kill all of the Jedis, including a bunch of the Padawans, and we learned Grogu was there and was shepherded out of the temple. I thought that was a really interesting backstory.
Did they expose
the fact that he's been the fact that he's been around for like all of the Star Wars canon period at this point is I think was significant and does line him up to be something more. I don't think he's walking away, at the end of this season and not coming back somewhere in this.
Yeah, that blew my mind that he was there and somebody saved him. Now, do we have any indication at all who might have squirreled him out of there? Obviously, it had to be somebody who survived.
Not necessarily. They might have been taken down if they took him ahead of time.
Well, and he was captured. He was at the end of the day, he was in Empire hands.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
At the beginning of all this, and then at some point got away, and then was back and got away. So we don't know. There's conspiracy theories abound of the wave R2-D2 gives that the little connection that they show at the end that R2 ends up being the penultimate good guy in all of Star Wars, and that he's everywhere and everything.
Yeah.
Guiding.
Grand Moff, what say you?
Well, I think that, they made the announcement that we're going to see more Samuel L. Jackson reprising his role as Mace Windu, like the season 3, season 4 of The Mandalorian, that we'll see a return of Mace, that Mace is supposed to get his own show. We see the end of Mace Windu thrown out the window after his, interaction with Darth Sidious. I personally, and I say this, knowing full well that I have ruined 3 Star Wars movies for the people I love, with my hypotheses.
Bring it.
I personally think that Mace survived his fall. He was injured really badly. He and I believe the Jedi librarian, whose name is escaping me.
Josenta.
Thank you. They had been hiding Grogu, or had been keeping him secret at the temple. And then Mace returns to the temple with the help of Josenta and R2-D2. They spirit him away and they go into hiding. Because we have this beautiful conversation where Ahsoka says he had hidden himself away from the Force. He had pulled himself away, Grogu, to hide himself as he was being pursued by the Empire. And I think he learned that from Mace, who also shut himself off from the Force. And Mace ends up teaching that to Luke, who in the sequel trilogy then uses that same ability to hide himself. And so at some point we're going to see, I think, Mace return and spirit away Grogu once again. And that's my theory. He's got to get these motherfucking Grogus off this motherfucking plane.
Yeah.
So I have to correct myself. It's Jocasta.
Jocasta. The Jedi Temple librarian.
Yes.
That's amazing to me.
Do we see this person in
Who was a Jedi?
the movie? Do we see
Clone Wars?
In Clone
We
Wars.
see her more.
I believe she's in Rebels.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I might be wrong. Yeah, I might be totally wrong. It might be Rebels. I confuse the two a lot.
Could be both. Sometimes
She's Yeah, she's in Clone Wars when there's the Coruscant noir episode where they're searching, where Ahsoka has been tasked to her. She's taken away from Anakin briefly, tasked to her, and they go on this city adventure. And then we see her again in Clone Wars, the movies, very briefly, defending her library in probably the most librarian weird fashion, where she's Obi-Wan's well, I don't see it in the records. And she's like, bitch, if it's not in my library, it doesn't exist. But then that's it.
Now, so we've learned a lot about Grogu's backstory. We got a lot of Grogu action in Mandalorian season 2, including this. What did you all call it? The Force communicator.
Epic meditation ever.
Yes,
that's what it needs to be referred to.
Now,
he's a meditation master.
Was this a Jedi temple that Grogu was at? Where was he?
He was at the ruins at Tython, so he's seated on their centering stone, which is supposed to amplify your connection to the Force. But I will tell you, I've seen other Jedi sit on such stones, and never before have they gone into the Avatar state doing so.
Okay. And then, obviously, the Empire gets its hands on Grogu in this season, and they took his blood. What do we think they're going to be doing with Grogu's blood?
What do they need his blood for?
The theory is that the Dark Troopers, the droid troopers that we encounter and Luke quickly dispatches, are Force sensitive in a way, because they reference that these aren't the first Dark Troopers. They tried trooper actual people in armor, and they were trying to make Force combat troopers. And the theory is that they're using Grogu's blood to inject midichlorians into these droids at this point to make them able to combat Jedi.
Well, didn't
Which
work.
is, I think, such a beautiful shout out to. I don't know who else read the Dark Horse. Well, it was Dark Horse, and then when Marvel got the rights, the Star Wars Legacy series that was set in the future of the original Star Wars universe, where we see a Caden Skywalker, and they introduced the idea of the Sith troopers, the Force sensitive clone troopers. So I think, to me, that was I had a nerd moment, because it's one of my favorite kind of non-canon series anymore, is this future telling of what the universe would turn into. And you have a Jedi who's also a junkie, and the Yusong Bong are still around and integrated into the universe. And it's just I got super excited when I saw the Stormtrooper helmet with the red eyes. I wanted to call my son, who's a big Stormtrooper fan, and be like, see, this is where they're going.
So those Dark Troopers that we see that you're talking about, that kidnap Grogu and take him up to Grand Moff Gideon's ship. Those are just robots, right? They're not people inside.
No,
They are. They're like Decepticons.
Okay. Now, Kay Tano, I wanted to ask you, is there a possibility, and has anybody theorized that they're using Grogu's blood in some way to resurrect the Emperor? Or because
Absolutely.
Okay, because we see several shots in The Mandalorian Season 2 of what I believe is the Snoke clone body, or those bodies that we see in Episode 9 in the Emperor's Chambers. Can you talk a little bit about those theories?
Yeah, there are some massive tie-ins that go along with that as well. Dr. Pershing and everybody that was working for him or with him that we saw in the first season all have the Kaminoan symbol on their sleeves or on their hats. And Kamino is where the clones were originally made. So we're talking about geneticists in labs. And now they are looking for the Force empowering components of Grogu's blood in order to transfer them into other beings. And they're testing them on living beings. So I'm going to debunk the Dark Trooper theory, because you don't test on humans to maybe put living, symbiotic, less than unicellular creatures into blood. You wouldn't put them into something living to then put them into non-living. You would just test immediately on the robots. They said that those were their failed experiments that were in the tubes at the lab on Navarro, that I still don't know how Greef Karga didn't know that was there. Like him and Cara Dune, that was a pretty major fail on them to not realize and to think that that was just a base that they were going to go blow up so that the Empire didn't come back, forgetting that there could be something going on there. There's been a lot of that in this second season where they're like, oh yeah, that's an old Empire something. No, it's still very highly active. But definitely Snoke-ish creatures. Some people have said that Snoke was the failed experiment on the way to reaching Palpatine. I also don't know if, as other Jedi might answer the most epic meditation of all time, because there's no way that only reached Luke.
Right.
No way. That definitely reached Ezra. He's out there somewhere. I don't know if he'll overlap. Ezra Bridger is another Jedi from Rebels. He is disappeared right now, and he's with Grand Admiral Thrawn. Last we saw him. And Ahsoka is on a mission trying to find Thrawn. Now, Thrawn is the ultimate bad guy ever. Like, Gideon is one of the biggest creeps I've ever seen in my life, especially when he torments Grogu with the stormtroopers, because he knows Grogu could defeat him otherwise. But Thrawn is even creepier than Gideon.
So what is this Jedi Ezra who we haven't seen in any live action form yet? What are they doing with Grand Admiral Thrawn? Do we know? Are they
when Ezra saved his home planet, he had to bolt out with Thrawn to get Thrawn out of there so that they could liberate his planet of Lothal.
Okay.
We haven't
into space. Out a window.
Okay. All right, we're gonna
Thrawn.
Oh, go ahead, Grand.
I was just going to say,
go ahead.
Thrawn was introduced in the Thrawn trilogy, which was an extended universe series of books that were set about 5 years after the Battle of Endor.
He's blue,
Thrawn,
right?
Yeah, Thrawn was a Grand Admiral who went AWOL into the kind of Outer Rim area during the final, Rebellion Empire battles. And in the books, Grand Admiral Thrawn isn't he is an evil douchebag, but he really believed in the Empire. And they say in the books, he's out in the Outer Rim and he comes in contact with the Yusung Fong, who are a extra galaxy. They're a nomadic group of aliens from another galaxy who are bent on conquest and conquering. He sees them coming and returns to the Inner Rim in an attempt to revive the Empire in order to stand up to this coming invasion, which I think we'll see in the form of the Grisk hegemony as a new force coming into to destabilize the entirety of the Star Wars universe. So I love it because he is evil. He is hell bent on being a dictator. But like we see in the MCU, his motives aren't black and white. He really sees this extra galactic threat coming and is trying to do something. But what he chooses to do, like we saw with Thanos in the MCU, is completely the wrong thing to do. The wrong thing to go about it. So
we'll almost now. Do you think will we see this Grand Admiral Thrawn pop up in a future Mandalorian season, or do you think we'll get him in a different show?
There's 10
Well,
shows,
the fun thing, they've mentioned Thrawn in Mandalorian, and then the fun thing, talking MCU, talking Marvel, is looking at what Disney is doing with the various splinter shows coming out of this, with Ahsoka and the Trooper, the New Republic Trooper one. There's
Rangers of the Republic.
There you go. Yeah, there's 6 different shows coming out of this, and people have likened it to the MCU and bringing 5 different shows into the Avengers, into a multi show, a multi-movie or show bring them all together, where you can bring back Grogu, bring in a new big bad, bring together all these stories that we get that seem to be starting in Mando and splintering off into their own series and feasibly coming back into a team battle. So I mean, that's what I'm excited for, is seeing them put it all together.
Do you think like they have it all mapped out already? They must, right?
Okay. That's how Filoni works, and that's how Favreau has agreed to work.
Okay.
There is no other way with Filoni.
There's a conspiracy theory already putting a character that's on the bridge of Moff Gideon's ship, the communications officer, like, who comes up and she says a couple of lines, and you're really focusing the camera on her. They're really pointing her out. It's not just an offshoot character. They're looping her into Ezra to be his friend Sabian Wren, who is a Mandalorian, and is they're like, the theory is they're setting her up that she infiltrated the Empire to find Ezra. And I mean, so far as people looking at the actress, and that she has martial art training, and Sabian Wren is a Mandalorian and ready to go, in a fight. So, they've got it mapped out. And I think we'll see stuff going forward. They're like, oh, missed that, cool. That was a setup piece.
I wanted to jump back a little bit, and we'll talk more about Grogu and what happens with Luke at the season finale of The Mandalorian for season 2. But I wanted to ask about Ahsoka Tano. I think a lot of people were really excited to see her represented in live action. What did we all think about the choice of Rosario Dawson and how she did?
I think that she was cast perfectly. They could not have done any better. She clearly did her homework and learned her character inside and out before becoming her.
Yeah.
It was seamless for me, and I did not even miss Ashley Eckstein's voice.
And that was the
100% agree.
Yeah. I thought she was fantastic, and again, I'm somebody who hasn't seen any of the Clone Wars stuff, either the series or the movie that Kay Tano keeps giving a thumbs down to whenever we talk about it.
Skip the movie, watch the series only. 7 seasons. Don't even bother with the movie.
Okay, so we liked her live action representation, and we're looking forward to seeing more of her, I think, because she's going to have her own series. And I'm hoping they do some of this backstory stuff that you all were talking about. That sounds really interesting to me.
I hear that it's actually going to run concurrent with The Mandalorian, so I think it's going to focus more on her looking for Thrawn. And although she's probably looking for Thrawn for multiple reasons, Ezra last being seen with him, she's also trying to find Ezra, another surviving Jedi.
All right,
I think we're going to see her show start probably around the time period that the Mandalorian started in season 1. Like, because we picked up when she walked in, she wasn't there for Grogu. She was there on her own business.
Yeah.
Like I think you're right, Kay Tano. I think we're going to see this kind of congruent storytelling that's going to fill in some of the blanks on what's happening in the other parts of the galaxy.
Additionally, I hear rumors that she is going to be crossing over into Obi-Wan's miniseries.
Ooh. That's what I was going to say. I mean, that's a great option, because that was a big breakup there with Anakin and her, and I think it's an amazing loop around of the story to bring her back in Obi-Wan, but also now we have Luke. Ahsoka and Luke could meet feasibly in this, and and converse about one of the ultimate Star Wars characters.
Yeah, and that's really interesting to me, given what we know about Luke's trajectory, right? If Ahsoka is this Gray Jedi, right, and we know right now as we see Luke in The Mandalorian season 2, he's like, he's all Jedi Order type of Jedi, right? But we know where he ends up, and I think it will be really interesting to see him interact with Ahsoka knowing that, I think. I don't know. That's interesting to me anyways.
An additional layer to that, though, is that Ahsoka was his father's Padawan.
Yes,
He
right.
essentially kind of killed his dad. His dad kind of sacrificed himself at the same time, but that turned him around at his point of death and salvaged him.
Wow.
So for Ahsoka to actually be able to connect with the child, and she knew Padme as well, and she trained under Anakin while he was training under Obi-Wan. So to bring all of these characters back together, Ahsoka's about 45 years old in The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Luke is only about 28. So she was a teenager when she was Anakin's Padawan, and all of that obviously fizzled out. And she didn't actually get to see that he had turned into Vader. She later runs into him as Vader and battles against him. I won't tell you the spoilers that go along with that because it's not what you would think based on what you know of the now.
Yeah, that sounds really fascinating.
And I think it would add a beautiful layer to Luke's decision in the sequel trilogy. You know, because the way things stand, Luke has one bad run-in with Ben Solo and gives up on everything and walks away.
Yeah.
And like completely says the Jedi's done. It's not a good path. It's, you know, it's a flawed concept and a flawed doctrine. And he walks away from it. And introducing Ahsoka, who says, like, there are other options. The Jedi Order failed me. Like, it failed your father. It failed the galaxy. Like, why are you subscribing to this? Like, would be a beautiful, like, rationalization that gets us to hobo Luke sitting on an island drinking, like, sea milk. Like,
yeah, that's interesting. And we'll talk a little bit more about Luke in The Mandalorian, but we can't leave Boba Fett in Mandalorian Season 2 unaddressed, right? How excited were we that we saw Boba Fett come back? Right, he escaped the Sarlacc pit. We now know that. Did we know that already?
Yeah.
Oh, we did. Okay. How did we know that?
We knew that he had climbed out. It's been the extended universe rumor for decades now, but we never really knew like where he went after that, what he was up to, and he became a mystery even though we knew he was lingering out there somewhere.
Oh, okay.
He became a mystery, and he's like, I feel like Boba Fett, if you can't tell from the pictures, not that the listeners can see, I love Stormtroopers and Boba Fett in the original trilogy and Stormtroopers continuing on are like the oddities of characters that they are considered so cool and badass, but they're really like Boba Fett, even in the original trilogy, is kind of a joke. He's a flounders.
Yeah.
He flounders all over the place. So, but we still treated him as this awesome bounty hunter for so long, and they're really taking that and redeveloping him into something, into really what he is, and redeveloping that storyline of who he actually is, being Jango's son and being Jango's son / clone, whatever, however you want to look at him. It took me a second in one of the scenes with Bo-Katan and I'm blanking on the other Mando's name.
Costco, I think.
Talking about saying, I know that voice and jumping into it. At first I was like, wait, what? Oh, never mind. Yeah, there's still clones, and like it wasn't that long ago that clone troopers were around. So I think the development of the character is cool. I was not nervous, but just hesitant when they were bringing him back because just such an interesting character to revive.
Yeah, Grand Moff.
And he's fascinating. I mean, he really is, because like in the original Lucas trilogy, we get 8 minutes of Boba Fett and it sparks 30, 40 years of fascination with this character, like with who he is, where he comes from. Like, is he a Mandalorian? Like, one of the greatest moments for me of like the Mandalorian series is when they say to Boba Fett, like, you're not a Mandalorian. And he's like, I never said I was.
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, he's never said it. I think in like the animated, like a brief animated like section in the like Star Wars Holiday Spectacular special, that if you've never seen it, it's worth an evening of like just complete and utter nonsense because it's so wonderfully bad, but like where he sets the record straight, and you know we're introduced to the idea that Jango Fett was a foundling but never truly subscribed his like son in Boba to like the Mandalorian creeds, and the doesn't enter him into like the Mandalorian clan system, and to have him come back and to have him like really be the badass that we see him, because when we see him in the Clone Wars, we meet him as a child, and then in the Clone Wars series, we see him grow into this legendary bounty hunter with many like falls and steps and stumbles, and then to see him return and like reclaim his father's armor is like, for me, it's beautiful. Like it's such a beautiful like nod, and like the idea that all the clones are based on Jango are based on Jango Fett and based then on Boba Fett. Like it just, to me, it was a wonderful moment, like to see him come back.
Do we, go ahead, Kay Tano, please.
I think it's going to be particularly interesting bringing up Boba as a child, watching Mace Windu slay his father. In the Clone Wars, he is only in the Clone Wars trying to hunt down and kill Mace Windu. If Mace Windu happens to resurface during Mandalorian timeline, you can bet that something's going to bring him to Tatooine, and him and Boba are going to come face to face again.
Now we were
I'd love to see that fight.
Yeah, that would definitely be interesting. I would like to see that. Now, do we think Boba Fett, we were talking about this online, Kay Tano, is Boba Fett good? Is Boba Fett evil? Where do we put him?
I can't say he's good. I think that he's evil for hire.
Yeah.
He's like chaotic neutral. He's like, he's for pay, but I mean, before the last episode, I would have said he's more chaotic neutral. He's just, you pay him to do what you need him to do. But the taking the throne at the end there of the Hutts, that steps him right into, well, if he's going to run the Enterprises the way the Hutts did, then he's just evil with a code.
That's more survival tactic and like taking over the place you came from. He needed that armor to go back and complete his own mission there.
It was a full circle.
And I think what's been done so beautifully over the course of the Clone Wars series and all these kind of interlocking shows like interlocking films like Rogue One is you see like the gray areas that so many people have to function in. It's not like the George Lucas series where it's like there's good, there's evil, there's the light side of the Force, and then there's a dark cave that you wander into and kill your dad. There's like most people live in this weird kind of place where they do things that their motivations aren't 100% of anything. Like, and I think Boba Fett represents like the darker side of that gray world that we live in. Like, when after Mace Windu unceremoniously like decapitated his dad, he was a kid out in the universe just trying to figure out how does he survive? What does he do? And like, it's kind of awe-inspiring to watch like that story go and develop, and then we have him sitting at his stinger, after credit stinger, taking the throne of the Hutts on Tatooine. It's I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it.
Yeah, and I really liked seeing his ship in action in Mandalorian Season 2. We got a lot of really cool shots of his. I don't know if it has a name in Star Wars canon.
Slave One.
Yes. Yeah. I love seeing that thing, like flying around and fighting, and I thought that was really cool.
I loved and appreciated the scene where they were sitting in Slave One, and you saw the frame moving as they were taking off, and like, just the mechanicals of, okay, so that's what it does. Yeah. And then when he's waiting on the heist episode, second to last episode, when he's waiting and he's sitting in his seat, laying on his back, ready to take off. I'm like, it was just the most impractical ship but it was so cool to see it in action.
Yeah. I mean,
though, for as badass as he is, where did he disappear to while they were completing this storyline?
It went
leaving Grogu.
It went girl gang completely. Like Mando snuck off, got into his little fight, but the scene of the 4 women entering the bridge, like, just masterpiece of showing awesome character development. Like, and it was there's a lot of talk of the Magnificent Seven parallels of that group getting together and everything, and getting together for this big grand entrance, and it was just really cool scenes. But yeah, you're like, where's Boba?
Yeah, and can we just give a shout out? I love seeing Katie Sackhoff back in a sci-fi show.
Sci-fi.
She was one of my favorite parts of the Battlestar Galactica reboot, and I loved seeing her. I didn't know anything about that character, and again, I'm going to ask you all to correct me. Is it Bo-Katan that she played?
Yes. Although she pronounces her name in the episode where they're in SeaWorld, she says it's Bo-Katan.
Oh,
although it was Bo-Katan in Clone Wars,
okay.
And I don't know if you're aware, Sawtooth Ren, that she is the voice of Bo-Katan in Clone Wars.
No kidding.
Oh, really?
Rebels.
I had no idea.
Really cool to see that she was brought in for that purpose.
Nice.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, it helps that she's an awesome actress and she has a lot of experience kind of in sci-fi
but she
shows.
also has been playing that character for 12 years already.
Wow. I had no idea.
We really have to watch all these.
You really do.
Was that did you want to jump in, TK?
No, I was just going to say you need to watch all the Clone Wars.
Well, now that we have access to it all,
And this
I'm chomping at the bit for my elder child to be a little older and to be able to embrace it and get to sit and rewatch it.
Yeah, and this conversation is definitely getting me excited to dive into that. I want to talk a little bit about this Darksaber thing that appeared, this sword that looks kind of like a lightsaber. Now, is this part of Star Wars canon? Is this something we saw before?
Yes. It has a really long history, starting with Tar Vizsla, who was a Mandalorian Jedi, and he crafted the Darksaber.
Does it have a kyber crystal inside of it?
Yep.
Okay, so it works like a lightsaber? Okay.
It's a lightsaber, and it harkens back to to Kylo Ren's lightsaber, and getting out of the mold of a clean, well-focused lightsaber.
Kylo's though is a cracked crystal. The Darksaber is fully intentionally made.
Is it a black crystal of some kind? Like, is it a special kind of crystal? Because all of the other light weapons I've seen have a color to them based on the crystal inside, right?
The crystals usually actually are colored by the energy of the user.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When they construct their lightsaber for the first time, they imbue it with part of their, essentially part of themselves, and it becomes a symbiotic tool between themselves, the crystal, and the midichlorians in their blood. And it's like, for me, it's the introduction of the Darksaber in the Clone Wars series, and how they touched on like the Jedi Mandalorian Wars and the history of like that conflict, and that there was one Mandalorian who essentially like merged and created this hybrid kind of status and ended that entire conflict. Like it's one of those things where it's like, these guys get it. Like they understand like that Star Wars is as much a like community creation as it is a creator creation. Like, we all helped create Star Wars and the things that like we engaged with from the time that the Lucas trilogy ended to the time that like the prequel trilogy came out. And like, we all invested in the mythos and read the books, read the comics, like, and helped to kind of like foster this myth that has like thousands upon thousands of years of history, and to see like the introduction of the Darksaber, and then to see it like carried through into the Mandalorian and given this prominent role, and like is, to me, like it's so exciting as a fan. Like it's so exciting like to see like this time that like when all the other kids were out like having social lives and doing things, and I was in my room like with a flashlight reading the Star Wars books, like that. Hey, I didn't waste my time.
It's all paying off now.
I thought it was interesting too with the Darksaber that season 1 stood on its own a lot in Mandalorian. It didn't tie back to the story as much, except for the fact that we knew it was in that world. But the ending scene of season 1 of him lighting off the Darksaber really says, okay, we're entering the time stream that fans understand and know.
Yeah,
with Clone Wars.
And I feel like season 1 of The Mandalorian, especially when they introduced Baby Yoda, we didn't know Grogu's name at that point. There was a little skepticism around like, where is this going? Is this gonna be what we want? Like, people were taken with Baby Yoda, but like, I feel like in season 2, like they doubled down on saying like Grand Moff Montgomery, you were saying like they doubled down on saying we're gonna start like paying off like real, like to the real fans, like the people who are dug in deep on the canon, like and there's so much, just like even watching people like you all talk about this stuff online in these chat forums, I'm learning so much and realizing how deep and multi-layered season 2 is.
But the crazy thing, I think, is that without having all this deep canon knowledge, it's still enjoyable.
Yeah.
Like, it's still paid off emotionally at the end of the season 2 finale for us. And we didn't know any of this stuff.
I'm that both seasons can stand on their own and attract people who have had no interest in Star Wars. They didn't know that they could love Star Wars, and now that there's so much tie-in, and there was a lot of it, like it sweat through the first season, but it's just oozing and flooding at this point in every direction, and every single one of those connections that has been made throughout is going to make people more curious. So I hate to say that in the end it's like the Disney cash cow brilliance, but they've got the lifers and they're going to keep pulling in all of the new people with everything that they're adding.
That speaks a lot to it. I think that season 1 was the test bed of, can we revive this? Can we reboot this in a different way? Because Clone Wars and Rebels and everything has been very popular with fans and kids, but it's not going to draw an adult watcher in unless they have a desire to be a fan.
Yeah.
Anecdotally, my father, who, was a teenager when the movies came out and everything, had never watched Star Wars.
Yeah.
Still to this day has never watched the movies. He loves Mandalorian. I think this will be him.
That's crazy.
To get into it.
And I think it because it went back to that wonderful formula that Lucas hit on in the first trilogy of, giving like genre nods to like the spaghetti westerns, the samurai films. As a longtime Lone Wolf and Cub fan, when we see the child in the first episode put a finger up and Mando put a finger down, I like literally had told my partner, I was like, if I just get one season of Mando and Cub, I am sold for the rest of my life. It was just this beautiful like entry into what really made Star Wars so magical and so amazing to like take part in. And like, I feel blessed that like I'm old enough now in my life to have experienced like that full breadth of like amazing storytelling. And like, and they shot a bunch of Jawas. They just brutally murdered a bunch of Jawas. And who hasn't wanted to see that?
Yeah, they deserve it.
I think some of
Kay Tano did not like that.
I mean, some people are saying Boba Fett's not evil. Like, the Jawas just steal stuff.
That's true.
I used to think Boba was evil because I think that killing people for money is evil. I think that killing people at all is evil and taking lives. But then I saw Gideon and I was like, oh, Boba's not so bad.
Can I ask you all a question? Are Jawas living creatures or are they flesh and blood? Are they robots?
Both.
They are one of the two indigenous beings to Tatooine, and I joke about Jawas being slaughtered, but there is a wonderful picture of me about 6 years old where my mom had made me a full-on Jawa costume. Mm-hmm. I'm from the middle of the desert in California, like deep desert, Imperial Valley, California. I have, for my entire life, said that I feel a huge kinship to the Jawas. They're small, they're brown, they're from the desert, and they will steal stuff if it's out there. And like that's my family.
Yeah.
Riding around in a giant trailer through the dunes, just grabbing what's not nailed down.
Yeah.
Come on, that's my people.
All right.
I just wanted to say really quickly about The Mandalorian, like even season 1, like some of the things I think that really like get to the audience is like the creatures that that they introduce, right? They're super fun, and they have all like the stupid commentary from the stormtroopers. Like it's like they just captured the spirit so well of the original trilogy. Like what made that so special? I don't know. Sawtooth just ran to the bathroom, but he and I talked about this extensively at some point about why. And then the music is so good too. They really like shot it out of the park with that music.
Oh yeah.
When the album came out on Spotify, this was like 2 days ago, I was so excited just for the one song, the Dark Trooper theme that was playing. Yeah. Oh, the music was so good.
Yeah.
Is it the whole season then that was released at once? Because last year they released one episode at a time and you could listen to it weekly.
Oh, really?
And this year I've been waiting and waiting and waiting. So I was wondering what was going on with that.
Yeah, I don't know. I love, like, it like sends like shivers like right up your spine when you hear that reed instrument, which we looked up. It's a bass recorder.
Yeah.
Yes, I will actually send you a video of people like reenacting it on a baritone, a soprano, and an alto recorder.
Oh, really? Oh, that's cool. Yeah. All
right. Can we talk a little bit about the end of the final season 2 Mandalorian when Luke Skywalker shows up?
That whole burst into tears.
That whole sequence. Yeah, I was bawling, like literally, like tears streaming down my face, and I had no doubt the second I saw that X-wing, right, that it was Luke. What did you all think?
No brainer at that point.
Yeah.
I thought they were playing us a little bit. I thought they wanted to play the casual observer, where they kept looking at the CCTV cameras, and I'm a technology person in real life, and the technology of Star Wars is such a beautiful weirdness with how backwards it is and how forwards it is. But
the biology is the same way.
Yes, it is. Looking at the security camera, and it's black and white, and I just love that, like really. But the fact that the fights it starts and it's all in black and white, I feel like it was a little bit of a play there, just because Ahsoka's got the white lightsabers. But I mean, it was pretty quick that you're out of that and onto Luke.
Yeah, the second I saw the black robe, I was like, "Oh no!" Yeah, like
you were talking about it before. You were like, you suspected that it could be Luke. You kept saying that, like, before.
I thought it had to be. I don't know. I didn't know about some of these other Jedi, like Ezra and the such, like. But I was, in my mind, kind of as a surface level fan, I was like, Luke, like, has to be the only one powerful enough to receive that, like, and do something about it.
No, it was the most epic meditation ever. Every Jedi.
She's not going to let us forget this.
Yeah.
I'm letting you know, though, every Jedi heard it.
Yeah.
Luke responded. He's not the only recipient of that message. There's never been anything like that before.
And I loved the echoes to Anakin and Vader and the way that Luke was fighting and going down the hallway. It reminded me a lot of the Rogue One scene where Vader is taking out all of those people. Like, Luke was vicious. I know they were only dark troopers, right? But like robots. Yeah, but he was vicious. Like when he force chokes that one, like he's just holding it up and he's just like squeezing the life out of it. Like that's a Vader move.
Which that's an interesting thing, is like force choke is a dark side maneuver. It's strictly supposed to be used by the Sith. So it's a definite cross of where is he in that alignment? Where is he thinking? Is he still kind of broken from having to kill his own father and everything?
Yeah.
Well, he might also be thinking these are just robots and I'm saving the real people on the other side.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The little green hand directing him on the screen.
Talking about scenes, that Rogue One scene at the end, crossing over into the opening of the original movie, was one of my favorite Star Wars scenes yet, of just the door opening and seeing Vader, really tying that movie in timeline perfectly wise. And, one of my disappointments with the latest trilogy was there was a lot of parallel scene. There was a lot of callback scene where like the layout of the whole scene is like exactly, calling back to the original trilogies, which I was like, come on, we don't need to call back constantly. But that form and style callback, it felt really cool to watch.
Yeah, Grand Moff.
Yeah, and it was really the first time too that like in a canon moment we get to see how powerful Luke Skywalker actually is.
Yeah.
And in a moment where it's on screen in live action, we get to see like Luke isn't just some whiny kid from Tatooine. He is a full-on Jedi master, and he dispatches these dark troopers who up until that point had been, one of them was a challenge for Mando to defeat, and Luke just cuts through them almost casually.
Like
And it's so beautiful because it's like that is the Luke that I have been waiting for my whole life.
I think we all
that
have,
is the Luke
right?
Skywalker I wanted to see.
Yeah.
Not only is that the Luke we've been waiting for, but at this moment in time, he's got his sister who he knows is force sensitive. In the extended universe, Han and Leia have twins that would be born right now. Those twins were turned by Disney into Rey and Kylo Ren.
Yep.
Interesting, right? Yeah. That they end up kissing anyway, because Skywalker twins do that. But anyhow, they turn they turn Jason Solo, one of the twins, into Ben Solo. Ben is actually Luke's son's name in the formerly written stories.
Yeah.
Named after Kenobi, obviously. But Ben is 4 years old at this point in time. So Luke, at the end of Return of the Jedi, is convinced that he's the only one. Yeah. And that is what I think the actual major importance is of him being the one to respond, because he heard the message from somebody else and hustled to find him somewhere out in space. The kid has moved around all over the place since where he sent his page from. And Luke went to go find him, and Luke is ready to save another Jedi so that he can get something started, because he knows that there still is the beyond Boba Fett level of evil out there.
Yeah, and since we're talking about it, I mean, we all know from episodes 7 through 9 that Luke starts a Jedi Academy. Ben Solo is there.
Pick me.
Yep. and Ben, when Luke, in his moment of weakness, turns on Ben briefly, like Ben explodes, destroys the Jedi Academy. Kay Tano, where Grogu must have certainly been there, right? What do we think?
No. Absolutely not. And it's all what you keep calling the surface level fans. I want to poison you all so you stop spreading poor rumors.
Oh,
This is very possibly the chosen one we're talking about. He does not need. So what you guys don't know is the timeline.
Yeah.
That happens 19 years past Luke picking up Grogu with R2.
Okay, so
19 years later. Luke's academy is not established for approximately 10 more years from now.
okay, so we
The
think
academy's not even a thing. So right now, Grogu's got a 1-to-1 master. He just jumped into apprenticeship. He's 50 years old. The events of Order 66 are about 30 years prior. So for 20 years, he was a super force-sensitive infant that was worth saving before the slaying of the younglings at the temple. He was like the one chosen to be saved out of all of them, even though they didn't know what was going to happen. They stashed him away before then. And he was being trained for that 20 years. Now, even though it's gone dormant, that doesn't go away. This is way more powerful than remembering how to ride a bicycle.
okay, so we think
30
Grogu
years later, he's already like, do you remember at the end of, I think it was chapter 7, he deflected the incinerator trooper flames?
Yes.
Like, that was it right there. He force healed somebody back to life when he saved Karga. Years before Rey was even born, but we didn't know that. But they happened to play like the episode, and then the movie came out, so it was perfect timing. This kid does not need 10, never mind 19 years to learn from Luke. Yeah. There's no way he would stick with just one master, and I think that he ends up learning from him for a period of time. If he sticks around with Luke and stays related to him in some way, possibly helping him form the academy.
Yeah. And I think that Grogu, like Yoda, achieves the rank of Jedi Master when he was 101 or somewhere around there. Okay. And so like we can speculate that Grogu is going to go through a growth spurt, like starting around the time that Luke would be forming his temple. Grogu's already going to be somewhere around a young adult. I think at that point he's going to be like, you know what, Luke, peace out. Have fun with all this. All what you're doing. I'm going to go out to eat more people and maybe go and look for like my Mando dad. No, he was eating babies.
He was destroying
are we
a family's
talking about the eggs? Okay.
Yes.
Here's your biology lesson. If this is all about defending this guy. Like, he's powerful to be beat by Kylo Ren. Come on now.
Now, let me ask
on top of it, the eggs were unfertilized. I'm vegetarian and I don't eat eggs. What about you guys? Do you eat chicken eggs? Because it's the same.
Yes.
And then people saying that he was bringing the species to the brink of extinction didn't even listen to what the Frog Lady's translation was through Amy Sedaris. Yeah. They were her last batch of eggs.
Yeah.
And frogs instinctively overproduce because not all those eggs are even expected to hatch. They're expected to be eaten by predators when they're young or before they're even fertilized.
Science
or when they're in a spaceship.
Yeah. Now,
I tip my hat to all of that science because yes,
Grogu is not evil.
Since we're talking,
no, he's not.
No,
he was hungry.
Since we're talking about reproduction, here's a question I've heard asked: is it possible Grogu is the offspring of Yoda and Yaddle, who we saw in the original,
maybe
in episodes 1 through 3, right? We saw this Yaddle, who was the female Yoda.
Yeah, she wasn't even around for all 3, and then she left the Order, and she is deceased.
Oh.
She actually basically ran off with a bomb that was about to explode to save Anakin and Obi-Wan.
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
Exploded with it in midair.
Was that in the Clone Wars too?
No. That's
like
deeper in the stories.
All right, I mean, so clearly there is a species of these creatures, right? And Grogu is descended from them, if not from Yoda and Yaddle, right?
It's gotta be
because Yoda and Yaddle are Jedis, right? They should not have been in a relationship and having babies.
And
Obi-Wan had a girlfriend. Anakin hit a wife.
I personally don't think Yoda would have gone that route because he was too straight-laced Like he was too much about like the order and about the idea of attachment, and kind of if you look at like where Yoda ends up, he doesn't seem to have any knowledge of Grogu, because he's like, when I'm gone, the last Jedi you'll be, except for my kid who, we don't talk. So like, what is he, like the world's worst dad?
Yeah.
But I personally think that like there were members of the Jedi Order who looked at how close Yoda was getting to Anakin and said like, we can't bring Yoda into this conversation around Grogu, because he's just, even though he's the Grand Master of the Jedi Council, like we can't trust him,
Right?
Like, which is like the history of the Jedi is filled with infighting and Jedi sects forming and people not trusting one another. They're their own worst enemy.
I feel like Yoda's the only one that I ever would have trusted had I shared a timeline with all of them. Yoda, however, is approximately twice the age of Yaddle as well. So I don't know that, like, if you have somebody smaller than Grogu born when you're already 500 years old, like, that just might not be of interest anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
Amy Sedaris does also say, though, to Mando that if he buds, she would like one. So maybe there's a possibility of
I missed that. That's funny. Like he's a gremlin of some kind.
Exactly. A Mogwai.
All right. Here's a question. Going back to Luke, what did we think of the CGI de-aged CGI Mark Hamill face? Did we like that, or would we have rather have seen an actor?
Sebastian Stan. I think it was I think it goes back to just like season 1 was testing the waters as to should they invest in this push into reviving Star Wars in a new direction. I think it was the same play there, where not tying it to an actor gives you this out. I mean, they could not bring Luke back, and we don't, like, okay, we got our cameo. He did something. We'll get a backstory when Grogu comes back. We don't need to see Luke again. I think they will. I think the overwhelming love for the scene will bring him back, but I think it was a cop-out to keep him at a distance.
I think the CGI might have been just some fan service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, well, it would have been... We had seen it though. We saw it at the end of Rogue One. We saw it in like the sequel trilogies. We've seen them do this before, and like there's a part of me that, like, from at least the artist perspective, it appreciates the idea that like now we have like the technological ability to do this. Like, even though it's like really uncanny valley and but like we can tell stories and we can bring back the iconic look of things in a way that, like, yeah, it's fan service, but like, again, I've been forking over money to LucasArts for... Oh,
exactly. I'm a fan and I like being served.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It was not a complaint, but I think that putting Hamill's face in the show was like, here's what you've been waiting for.
Now,
I think it needed to happen at that point in time. Like when they did it for Leia, they had to. When they did it for Tarkin, they had to.
I hope if they move...
They don't have to anymore.
I hope if they move forward with younger Luke in some of these series, that they do bring in a new actor and kind of with Hamill's blessing, right?
I disagree.
What do you think?
I disagree because they've already created this continuity between the movies, where they had him in the sequels and they had him in the original trilogy. And so it's clearly the same person. And if they just threw in some rando person...
Oh, there's a doppelganger.
Yeah.
There's a doppelganger.
TK said his name. It's
Sebastian Stan. Yeah. And there's been a long-standing Twitter conversation between Hamill and Sebastian Stan, the Winter Soldier in the MCU, bringing back to the MCU, bringing that like Hamill's already blessed it and loves the concept. Mm-hmm. I look at it as it's like the dragons in Game of Thrones. If they're going to bring Luke back, they need to bring in an actor because the cost. I think the cost and the uncanny valley, and I don't think they're gonna use that as a long-standing. Like you said, they had to do it with Tarkin. They had to do it with Leia. It fit the scene here. I mean, how long ago was this filmed? I still think that they're playing the field to see. Do we appreciate that, or do fans go, "God, get it out"? We don't need Skywalker to come back.
That emotional payoff, though. I mean, the tears coming out your face.
Oh, I know. I was full on ugly crying. Yeah,
but I love the idea of using it judiciously, and the idea that Star Wars is a huge universe and it's a huge galaxy, and there are stories to tell. I mean, there have been people telling stories about droids that showed up for like 3 minutes in the original series. And, where do they come from? Who are they? Where do they fit into all this? Like, we can get those stories with just a minute of CGI Luke at any given time. And that's what excites me.
Yeah.
Like that we have the ability to bring it back when it's necessary, but we're not tied to it.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you all too about when Mando takes his helmet off at the end, right? I mean, that's one of the reasons I was bawling, right? But I think there's another question in there too, is we see Mando take his helmet off when he's in the officers' cafeteria so he can break into that console. I think they're trying to say something there, and I'm not quite sure what it is, so I'm going to ask you all to tell me what they're trying to say.
I thought it was Bo-Katan giving him his own history of Death Watch and where he was picked up as a foundling, and that they're a cult in a cult, a super fanatic side of Mandalorian. I thought the scene in the episode before that, where they're sitting in his ship and he goes to eat and he just lifts up the thing, was just like, I mean, he'd already taken off his helmet when he was injured, but circumstances, that was just like, oh, hey, look, they're already breaking it a little bit. That we've seen in the greater lore, we've seen Mandalorians all over the place, and none of them have ever kept their helmet on. We've seen them saving Ren, Bo-Katan, Tar Vizsla, all these guys take their helmets off, all these people. And I think it was just that break scene was really just going, okay, he's already lightening it. Maybe it's just because he treats Grogu as his kid and it's family or whatever. But I think it was showing that he's rethinking his history, as he's been fairly alone. He had his group there with the armor and the other guys that I hope and wish would come back, although I think they're mostly dead.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think, Kay Tano, about Mando taking his helmet off? Yeah.
Well, first, I do think that when he and Grogu were sitting and sipping some soup on the Razor Crest, moment of silence. That was another cry moment. Not as big one as the ending.
That's the Mando ship, right?
Yeah.
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 That was his home. That was Grogu's home too.
Mm-hmm.
Grogu's trying to look up under it. So Grogu's got like the point of view, and he kind of turns and cranes his neck to see his dad's face. And I don't think Mando was actually being careless about it. I think the dude's just got to eat at some point in time. And I think, like, in that moment, I was like, "You're gonna do it. Take your helmet off and let your baby see your face." And he didn't, and I was disappointed. But I didn't expect it would happen at that point in time. When in chapter 15, he has no choice. He is missioned by the armorer to return Grogu to his people. In the meantime, he's the clan of two, and the actual, not just like appointed guardian, but in love with this child even more than I am, father to Grogu. That's his Papalorian. Yeah. They definitely have like that I look up to my father, I love my son relationship, and the way that his role as a parent blossoms through the episodes this season particularly is fantastic. But he takes that off because it's that, or he's about to be shot by some imps.
Yeah.
Like, and then Grogu's gone with Gideon and being tortured and killed and whatever else Mando thinks is happening to him. So in that moment, that's a pure sacrifice for the child. He's like, now I have no other way to do this. Amazing that Mayfeld is like, everybody else who saw you with your helmet off is dead, and I didn't see it. So
Yeah.
I loved that he paid him that respect after they had their mishaps in the first season together. But at the end, in my head, in fact, I probably did say it out loud. I was watching it alone. I would watch the episodes at like 7 a.m. before school would start every Friday. And I was like shaking the table. My iPad was on, and I was like, "Take off your helmet!" 'Cause he was about to say goodbye to the kid.
Right.
The whole entire time that Luke's like taking out the Dark Trooper Decepticons, I was like, "Take off your helmet!"
Yeah.
And he still wasn't listening to me. And of course, the 3 fingers go up to the helmet, and he takes it off. One thing, and I knew at that point he had to, like, he was saying goodbye, even though he knows he's not really saying goodbye. They can't not reconnect these 2 characters. It would be the most rotten thing in the story of history, or in the history of storytelling.
Yeah.
It would be like the biggest mistake.
What?
But he takes it off, and I can't believe that he didn't say Grogu's name.
Yeah.
I thought he would say goodbye to him face to face, and you would get to see that really excited, oh, my dad recognized me by name look that he had repeatedly when Ahsoka was in the episode with him.
Yeah.
But I keep wondering, did he not do that because he knows that Gideon's there, and Gideon knows everything, like annoyingly so, and even to the point where they're in the cell that Grogu was being held in, and Gideon's like, I even know that you set off your wrists.
Yeah.
I already know you shot your whistling birds. Like, I know how many of everything is anywhere ever, and I am omniscient. So I feel like right now, maybe that's a seed for Din having protected that slight bit of connecting identity that might keep Gideon and the Empire from getting their hands back on him.
That's a good point.
Sure.
And that the name of the child is one thing that Grand Moff Gideon didn't have. That's a really good point.
Now, when he's told Mando that he didn't need him anymore, was that true, or does he still need him?
He already got more blood from him, but if they failed the experiments like they did the first time, the message that was from Pershing that they projected said, like, we're out of donor specimen. He's not a donor, you stole it.
Yeah. Right. 2 things occurred to me in that scene, Grand Moff Montgomery, that maybe you have some thoughts about. One was, I feel like there's something unsaid, right, but implied once again about codes, right, and living by codes and how they fail people, right? And if the Mandalorian was going to live by his code, he would have missed out on this moment of connection with Grogu. There's that, and then the other thing that kept popping into my mind, I kept echoing back to the scene between Luke and Vader on the Death Star, where Vader says, remove my helmet. I want to look upon you with my own eyes. Like, I cannot help but think there was some connection there. Do you have thoughts about that?
Yeah, and I mean, I want to say something about like that the whole idea of like the Mandalorian culture not being a monolith, like that it is like this clan culture that's spread out across the galaxy. That Mandalore is the planet that has like this spiritual, like we are from Mandalore, but the Mandalorians of the Mandalorian War were galaxy spanning nomad warriors who literally filled their ranks with like war children, war orphans, like, and so the idea that like he's been brought up in this subsection of a culture that prizes like these rigid codes of like, you don't show anyone your face, you follow the code, like, I didn't so much want him to say like Grogu's name so much as say like, this is the way, like, right. And when he hands him over, because like in some ways, like he becomes the centralizing force because he's the guy who now holds the Darksaber. He is the symbolic and literal leader of every Mandalorian clan out there. and he redefines what it means to be Mandalorian. He redefines the code by taking on this foundling, by having this relationship, by putting the needs of the foundling over the needs of himself, in the same way that at the end of Jedi, we see Luke redefine what it means to be a Jedi. You know, the moving forward, Luke Skywalker is the Jedi Order. He subscribes to, you know, what he creates. And in that way, at that last moment between he and Vader, he does something that really flies in the face of everything we know about the Jedi Order. And that is, like, we don't breed attachment. We don't, like, all of these things, they're paths to the dark side. He saves his father by saying, like, no, I know there's good in him. I know that he's still there. I love this person I've never even met. And in his final moments, he drags his father to the shuttle, and they have this moment of deep, deep connection that both of them have been denied their entire narrative.
Yeah.
Like, and in that way, he redefines what it means to be Jedi. And it's such a beautiful parallel in that moment where here's Din, and he is the leader of the Mandalorians. He holds the Darksaber. He won it in fair combat. He subscribes to the most rigid form of the Mandalorian code, and he removes his helmet to say goodbye to his son. It's like, that's the moment I cried. And I didn't cry when they threw my own father in the bog.
Yeah. Just all of that, right?
Well, like, even the episode before, I think it was the episode before, where, like, he threatens Moff Gideon, and he said that Grogu means more to him than he would ever understand. Like, that was just so heart-wrenching.
That was another super crying moment. But the words that he said in that hologram were almost word for word what Gideon said to him when he had Grogu earlier on. So he pretty much recited to him the threat, but instead of it now being the I'm a scary creep who wants to experiment on a child, he was the father from Taken.
Yeah.
And Gideon totally had to go change his pants after he got that message.
Right. So, wrapping up our conversation about Mandalorian Season 2, I mean, I'm hearing we all agree that they knocked it out of the park with this, right? And we're excited for Season 3, whenever that comes around.
December 2021.
That's soon. That's awesome. And we're going to have
a year from now.
Yeah.
That's soon. I thought that's when the Boba Fett thing came out.
Both.
Yeah, both.
Oh, they both come out in December 2020. And what's the next one that comes out?
I think, is it Obi-Wan that we're going to get next? Possibly the Obi-Wan series. There's a whole host.
There's like 10 that came out.
Yeah,
right?
we have the Ahsoka.
There aren't a lot of release dates. Yeah, Obi-Wan is coming.
Yeah, we have Obi-Wan Kenobi. We have the Ahsoka show. We have Rangers of the New Republic. We have
Andor.
A Cassian Andor series.
That's gonna be so good.
Something called the
Bad Batch.
Yeah, something called the Acolyte.
What's that?
I don't know.
That is going to be the theory with the Acolyte, is that's playing into the new story arc of Star Wars, going back in time.
The High Republic.
Yeah.
Yep.
The High Republic is the new arc where they want to take after we get out of Skywalker and into this still in the lore, but going back in time and reevaluating what we know of all the world, not the characters, because these characters are going to be, this is long before the characters.
Yep.
Yoda is the only overlap.
That will be great. I hope we get some Yoda in that. A Lando series, something called Star Wars Visions. I don't think anybody knows what that's going to be.
My understanding is that is anime adaptations of stories that have already been told.
Okay. So anyways, I mean...
A droid story.
Yeah,
don't forget Droid Story.
A droid
the original
story.
vision for the Lucas sequel trilogy was supposedly going to be R2 and C-3PO recounting the entire Skywalker adventures.
And they did that in Lego.
They did that in Lego.
The Lego series are crazy. There's just a Lego holiday. There was a Lego holiday special. Like that's what I can watch right now with a 3-year-old. The Lego Star Wars stuff is awesome. I mean, it throws comedy in there, but it's still like canon Star Wars storytelling.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited for the droid stories because, R2 is the only one that knows the history. He
knows everything.
Everything. He was there for everything. He knows the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Every time C-3PO got his memory wiped, someone saved R2 from doing it. Seriously, R2 hasn't been wiped. He knows. And that's why he knows Grogu, and he gets all excited.
He did a
at
shimmy.
the end of the episode.
He did a shimmy. And, when I reflect on how Mandalorian season 2 made me feel and how it connected back into the other stories in these deep but not overstated ways. Like, I think about episodes 7 through 9 and I can't help but think about the missed opportunities there. Like, there's so much I love about 7 to 9. Like, mostly Kylo Ren, Ben Solo. Like,
but they could have done so much more with him.
I know. And when I think about that, like, I think the misstep for me for 7 through 9 was not wrapping up the Skywalker trilogy and focusing on Kylo and, making the other characters around him. I feel like that, for me, that was the big misstep. What do you all think?
I feel like a redemption for Ben Solo is a redemption for Luke, too.
Yeah.
So that was missed altogether. But their biggest failure was deciding to haphazardly piece it together as they went along instead of writing the plan in advance.
Yeah. Grand Moff, what do you think?
I think that honestly, they could have kept every single thing right up until the moment where Palpatine throws Ben Solo into the hole, and he's like, and so falls like the last Skywalker. Mm-hmm. And Ben jumps back out and should have said, like, I'm not a Skywalker. I'm Solo. I'm Han Solo. I'm the son of Han Solo. And we could have then had Ben and Rey essentially like take up two different training academies, one on Mustafar and one on Tatooine, each one training students and handing them back and forth. And then we have Thrawn come in, the first new movie, we have Thrawn come in and annihilate both of them and just throw the world into complete chaos. And we have a new batch. Think like Harry Potter, but in Star Wars. It focuses on these students who have suddenly lost both of their masters. They're trained in both like the darker elements of the Force and the lighter elements of the Force. They're out in the universe trying to like stay one step ahead of Grand Moff Thrawn. Mm-hmm. And like there's a beautiful story, and we get like a redemption of Luke, we get a redemption of Ben, we get a point to Rey that like I always felt was weird, because it's like, so the Palpatines won, like they like Emperor Palpatine is like, in the end his offspring ends up even calling herself Skywalker. Like, wait a minute. And so that's the moment where I was like, okay. Like, so
there's like an additional ping of pain when she claims the name, although I did find it touching while watching, especially the first time. I might have gone 5 times to the theater. I couldn't let it go. It was the end. Yeah. And we didn't know we were getting all the things we have now and that are coming. But to rewrite Jaina Solo, who should have been Kylo Ren's twin, to take her out of Skywalker lineage that already exists, and then make her be like, well, I kissed my brother and now I'm a Skywalker. I looked at that and I was like, that's the most bizarre way that you could wrap up a 42-year-long story.
Yeah. TK413, what are your thoughts? about 7 through 9 kind of in relation to what we've seen here in Mando season 2?
In Mando season 2, I feel like, and again, looking at my aesthetic of what I enjoy out of Star Wars and the aesthetic, I feel like Mando did so much more for the Empire and giving story and breadth to it.
Yeah.
It kept the Stormtroopers as utter cannon fodder, utter cannon fodder. But it gave a backstory. I thought there were 2 scenes with the pilot in Pershing's transport and sitting in the officers' bar there with Mando and Mayfield that gave a breath to the Empire and talked about what they're doing and their passion, Nazi side passion, wherever it may lie, but it gave their passion there where I felt like they just tossed that all out the window. They tossed the whole storyline out the window with the new trilogy, with bringing in the new order and changing things and twisting it. And I loved them because I'm a fan. And you said it before, fan service is service to the fans. I love it. I'll take whatever I can get. But they could have, the 2 seasons of Mando show what actual leadership could have done for the series and developed the stories. And I think they cash cowed it and rethought it. And I think they saw the passion again, the reigniting of passion, and Mando is the jump in there, and they went to the right people. They went to the people that have developed the stories, the right stories.
And people who are obviously like passionate fans of Star Wars, right? What do you think about the people who are insisting we redo 7 through 9?
What's done is done.
Yeah.
I don't feel like you can erase like 6 to 9 hours of film in a trilogy of trilogies. That would actually be a really ugly eraser mark on the paper that is Star Wars.
Do what the shows have been doing. The shows have done a wonderful job of patching holes, fixing storylines, giving breath to storylines. I mean, two true fans, we watch Clone Wars, we watch Rebels, we watch all these things, and that patches these holes. And the books and the comics, they all do these parts to patch the holes that the movies can't get across in 3 hours. You can't ever say the whole story in 3 hours. I mean, look at all the book adaptations. So
do you think...
I think that's what they do.
Grand Moff, please, go ahead.
No, two things. Like, I want a T-shirt that says "I kissed my brother and now I'm a Skywalker."
I can make that.
I want one so bad.
I got you.
You are my new best friend. And I think that, like, honestly, like, one of the wonderful things about Star Wars, and I know I said it earlier, is that it is community generated myth. And, you know, the idea that, like, there in one part of the universe there is this story that involves Rey and the Skywalkers and, you know, that whole arc and where it is, that's one part of it. And we don't need to destroy it or burn it to the ground to build around it as a community. And, like, the idea that Grogu is actually the chosen one, and that, like, there's this parallel story happening that, like, hasn't been explored is a beautiful way to not, like you said, put an eraser mark on what they've done, but
draw a bunch of stuff in around it until you don't see it anymore.
It's a cover-up tattoo.
A cover-up tattoo.
Yes.
I'm hoping we get... I mean, do you think we'll see more Ben Solo, Kylo Ren content in the future?
There was just a series of comics.
Yes, the fall of Kylo Ren, was it?
Rise.
The Rise, okay. Yep.
The fall of Ben Solo.
The fall of Ben Solo, yeah.
The rise of Kylo Ren. Yep. So I think we get the rest of his arc there, other than his childhood.
I know.
I'm hoping that maybe a lot of the comics start to be translated to on screen. Even though I can read a book or a comic, and I've done a lot of that in this universe over time, I'll tell you the one thing that falls on me all the time is the video games. I have to listen to podcasts that talk about what happens in the Star Wars video games so I can pull from those plot holes.
Yeah.
And the canon, bringing the games into canon, So sorry, soft serve guys, we're dragging you on, but the bringing the who the last Jedi are that could have answered the meditative call and bringing characters from the games in was like, Christ, I play games, I love video games. I haven't played any of them, and I need to do the research to understand those stories and how they loop in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much.
And there's such a huge wealth of amazing stuff. Like, I just restarted playing Knights of the Old Republic 2 because they released it on the iPhone. And like the idea of like Revan and the Revanites and like the like Infinite Empire and all of this stuff is out there, and they can pick and choose and add and touch on, and like the stuff with the Fallen Order being canon from the newer video games. It's just, there's so much great stuff that I don't think they'll have problems finding other amazing stories to tell. And I think that's what the Mandalorian proves.
Yeah.
I think that ultimately the way that people that are hooked into it, who have gotten really hooked into it, are appreciating how comprehensive the story and the backstories and the side stories all link into each other. It is intellectual, and it is so heady that it literally lights me up to learn the next thing, or to make that connection when you see something in the background, or to hypothesize and speculate and wonder what's coming next. Like, is the woman who has been serving Moff Gideon, is that Sabine Wren? And if it is, she's already pretended to be in the Imperial Academy, and prior to that, she was actually in it. And on top of it, she's a former Darksaber holder. So the possibility sitting there for the next year is one of those things that will just keep lighting your brain up while you wait for the series to continue the story. As long as we know Grogu's safe, and we do for sure right now, then everything is good. This is the way.
Yeah, this is the way. And I think that that's a good place to begin wrapping this up. As we're doing that, I just want to go around and give you all kind of a final chance to say whatever you want about Star Wars, about Mandalorian Season 2, whatever you want. We'll start with TK413.
Yeah, I won't dive. I'll just say that talking in this has been wonderful, and just nerding out on it is so nice. Makes me want to, get the mics out and start my own little nerd podcast. But it's good to. It's always good to. Yes, let's do it. It's always good to just look deeper into these things and have fun with it, and have fun learning and relearning all the depths of these stories.
Okay, Kay Tano, any final words?
Yeah, if you have any listeners, because I know that Soft Serve has grown tremendously, and I'm loving watching it from its early days to episode 100. What will this be, like 112-ish?
I don't even know.
115.
Holy cow!
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping that any of the casual Star Wars fans that might have listened for this past 2 hours to us can appreciate, as they maybe reapproach all of the movies and the shows, the fact that everything that happens in the galaxy is something that's happening on Earth with people. Like, we're hurting the environment. We have problems between species. That's races on our planets. There are wars all over the place. Everybody's about control and power, and the people fighting for control and power to take it back are also becoming part of the problem. And all of those themes are woven throughout, and it makes it so important to recognize what we need to do to be more humane in our existence. So watch it all and enjoy it.
Well said, Kay Tano. Thank you. Grand Moff Montgomery, what say you?
For me, just a second to everything that's been said before, and like being on Soft Serve with you guys tonight, and getting to talk to Kay Tano and TK143, like, this is everything I needed, like everything my inner quarantine Star Wars nerd has desperately needed. Like, so thank you. But also, like, you know, my 14-year-old who lives half the year with their mom in Los Angeles waited to watch the new Mandalorian series until he came out here with me on his last trip. And like, we got to experience that in a way that, like, one of my favorite memories growing up, and I grew up with a lot of siblings, and, you know, we were poor and didn't have a lot of money. And like, my dad used to work like 5 jobs, but he took us to see Empire. And I remember sitting in the dark, looking at him and seeing how engrossed he was and seeing how engrossed we all were. And then walking out and driving home and talking about what we had seen. And like, here was this thing that we could both love and share. I got to have that moment with my kid. And like, for me, that, like, I cannot thank all of the creators who put their time, effort, and love in enough for that. Because it's something that, like, it brings so much joy into my life. Like, and he went home right before the last episode, and he called me. It had to be 4:00 in the morning his time, like the day it came out, and was like, "Did you watch it yet?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm not even up." Like, and so like that connection is like. It's so wonderful. It's so wonderful. Like, yeah.
Don't forget, Disney Plus lets you have watch parties.
Oh, yeah.
I did not know that.
Well, now you do know. So all the things coming out, if it's not timed with your shared in-person time, you got it.
Oh, you just made my night. Like that.
Well, Grogu told me to tell you.
Thank you,
Grogu.
Thank you, Grogu. Gen 2.
Yes.
Thoughts after.
I feel like we have so much more to dive into.
Oh, there is.
And it's fun because we're rewatching it with the kids. So we just watched 4, 5, and 6. We're going to go to 1. And now we have all this new stuff to watch with them.
Yeah.
And we just finished The Mandalorian with them, and they loved it. And
yeah.
It's great. It's a great, like, little world creation that they've done.
Yeah.
As a new father, I can't wait.
I know,
to
right?
do that. I mean, and not even, you know, the child I'm holding is, you know, weeks old, but my 3-year-old, born on 5/4 on May 4th,
awesome.
You know, primed and ready, is so excited to watch it. And I'm just chomping at the bit, having him watch Lego Star Wars to ease him into it as he gets, you know, the maturity to be able to watch it. I just can't wait to do that. And I'm jealous of the parents with kids that are of age to appreciate it. So can't wait for that.
Yeah. And for me, Mandalorian season 2, whatever it is, it just got back to that thing
magic
that made me love Star Wars.
Yeah.
And, you know, not that I hated all of the content we've got since episode 1 onward. It's not it. It's just something felt different and magic about it. And it just transported me back there.
Well, you know, and you and I have talked about episode 3 has one of the greatest scenes, I think, in it.
Oh, I love episode 3.
Like towards the end where Obi-Wan is fighting with Anakin.
Yeah.
That's like one of the most heart-wrenching scenes, I think.
Yeah, it is. All right. I want to thank you.
So you watch season 7 of Clone Wars and see what was happening in another place at the same time.
Oh, God. All right. We have a lot to look forward to.
And we'll do that. And maybe
I think we should do some more of this.
We might.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was a lot of fun. And I have to thank you all. TK413, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank your Padawan, too.
Yep. Thank your little Padawan
Absolutely.
sitting there. They've been lovely. Grand Moff Montgomery, thank you.
Hey,
I really
thank
appreciate you joining us. Kay Tano, thank you. Your passion, your Grogu on your lap with his lightsaber, it's all infectious. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really enjoy talking to you all about Star Wars. And like Stomping Jen said, Gen 2 said maybe we'll be able to do another one of these. So with that, I want to say to our fans, I hope you enjoyed hearing us geek out on Star Wars. And we will catch you where, Stomping Jen? May the Force be with you. That's what we want to say.
May the Force be with you. Yes.
This is the way, right? We're going to
Yes.
end on this is the way?
Yes, all of that. Yeah.
All right.
We love you. Be safe.
Yeah,
all the things.
And this is the way.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. America knows that this world of ours, ever growing smaller, must avoid becoming a community of dreadful fear and hate. Those who have freedom will understand also its heavy responsibility. That all who are insensitive to the needs of others will learn charity, and that the sources, scourges of poverty, disease, and ignorance will be made disappear from the earth. And that in the goodness of time, all peoples will come to live together in a peace guaranteed